Good morning and welcome back to the model shop. So today we're looking at my No Man's Land diorama. I've got two things I want to talk to you about today. Number one, I did a couple of German figures. Now these German figures are just regular figures you get out of a kit, but I modified them with my Dremel. I'll even show you the bit that I use. It's a great bit. It's like this tapered spiral bit that really let me get in there and do some great details. And I think it's a lot of fun. The next thing I'm going to show you is also a very tight picture of how I make my barbed wire. You know, I've shown barbed wire before, and I'll even use some of that old footage, but what I did was I reshot it so you could see really close work of making that barbed wire. So if you're interested in making that barbed wire, I'm going to show you the tool that I use and the little jig setup that I have for it. I think it'll be really informative. So that's what we're doing today. I hope you enjoy it. So these figures are carved. They're not printed or anything like that. I just took some regular figures and then carved them with my Dremel. This guy was repairing the wire. He's got a little, if you can see in his hand, he's got a wire cutter and stuff like that. There's his weapon is off to the side. And he was repairing the wire when he got shot. And so I think that's a nice detail. The first thing I did with each of my figures was I wanted to fit it to the diorama. So I took it over to my sander and I sanded down one side so it looked like it was partially buried. Once I placed it on the diorama then, it looked like it had been there for a while and then dirt had come up and buried the soldier. Next, I started in on the hands, and you can see here, I've just carved away between the knuckles. And what I'm doing is I'm using this tool. It's a Master Tools 9928. It's just really nice carving tool. And the beauty of this tool is this tip. See the diamond shape? It's really small and super sharp and gets right in between the fingers and, you know, avoiding the knuckle. That's a big part of this. So I can like scoop out what I don't want in there. I next went to the back of the hand. And again, this tool is just fantastic because it's so precise. I can get each of the lines between which would be the bones on the back of the hand. Now I skipped around between the fingers and the hand, but what I'm trying to concentrate on is removing material in between what would be the knuckles. That's really important. Then I could go back with a brand new X-Acto blade and then I thin down again between the knuckles. That's key to this whole thing. Everything happens between the knuckles because the knuckles should be bigger bone or like a bigger mass, and then the actual bones should be smaller. And so that's what I'm carving away. Here you can see on the original one that's in the diorama where I did leave the knuckles bigger and then just concentrated on the bones themselves between the knuckles. The next thing was the skull, which, boy, I got to tell you, it was not easy to do. I tried to thin down the neck. I didn't go with just like a neck bone or nothing, but I worked all the way around it to thin the neck down and then try to create a skull out of his face. Worked okay, but I think something to take note of here, when you're doing this carving, it's just part of the process. The other part of the process is painting, and painting does a heck of a lot to make it look right after you're done carving. Now, I didn't get all that much footage of me actually carving because like when I was doing the face and stuff, I was just getting in there so tight, it was really difficult. But I did get some good footage here. And as I'm carving this arm, I'm thinking of exposing the bones themselves, but I want the fabric to be kind of like rotted away and falling down below the bone. So that's what's in my mind as I'm doing this carving. Now I've removed enough material where I can start defining where the bone is and the cloth ends. I'm just using the very small end of the tip to get in there and create basically a almost like a cutaway. And then I go back and try to smooth over the bone and the shoulder to make it look like a shoulder and a bone. This is a brass brush, and the nice thing is the brass isn't hard enough to make lines or anything like that. It actually smooths the plastic really nicely, and I use this a few times as I'm carving so I can get a reference, you know, see how far I have to go. But at this point, I think I'm pretty well done. This helmet I kind of went into a little bit too much, so we're gonna do some more with that. Gonna kind of get his helmet goofy. Painting was very basic. I used German camouflage green for the uniform, and then I used like an ivory for the bone. Now, after I had it painted and set up, I went back and used a little bit of rust, I guess, to make it look like there was still maybe a little bit of flesh on those bones. I hope it's not too gruesome. I think it looks good, but that's how I went about the painting. Mounting him in the diorama was also very simple because I'd done that cutaway, so I just had to place him down. I brought a little bit of that sanded grout up around him and then match the other colors in the artillery crater. For my second guy, that's the same process. You know, I kind of use the sander to kind of flatten the back out, and then I test fit him in another crater in the diorama, and I love the look. Now, when I did the carving on this guy, I didn't start with the hands. This time I started with the uniform. I really wanted to show a lot more bone, a lot more of the uniform being draped over a decomposing body. And so that's what I had in mind here. I've got the ribs showing, and then, you know, I also wanted to go ahead and show even the hips, so you can kind of see the hip bone there. It's just a series of wasting away, you know, with the Dremel, wasting away all that excess material. And then when I got down to that point, I was able to work with the bones and even carve out a little bit underneath the bones to look like the fabric was really hanging off of the bones. After carving, I paint it with a little bit of glue, and that gets rid of all the fuzzies from carving. Now, after all the carving, I thought these boots looked huge. So what I did was I found some other boots from another German soldier, and I cut off these galoshes, and I put these other boots on there, and I think they looked a lot more appropriate once I had it all together and started the painting process. Okay, so now it's time to mount my latest guy. So this is another German soldier that I kind of messed up, and I think right here instead of back here and here, I have to have some of these open for, you know, having British soldiers when the tank is here, British soldiers advancing on the position. So I think this is one of those places I want to put a British soldier. So I'm going to put that guy there, nothing here. I also thought about having him here, you know, back here, which looks pretty good. I really like this position because his head is at the base of a tree. Now, in the other position where he finally ends up, his head is at the base of a post, so it's kind of that same look. So I think that's where he's going to go. Okay, that looks good. So there's my subject. He's who I'm mounting in. So I mostly want this stuff down here under his legs. Okay. So he's nicely embedded at that point. Now we'll use a little water. I'm not too worried if I get mud on him because it's easy enough. I'm going to take some of that out though. It's easy enough to kind of wash him. He's been painted, as well as I got some flat clear on him. So I'm not in danger of messing up the paint, but I just don't want to mess up the crater. Make it look like it's a nice crater still. This is one of the things I think is really fun in building, and that is, you know, setting in your details. I just enjoy this. I think it's a neat part of the process, because just like the repair that I just did in the last video, I need to, you know, put this in there and then make it become an integral part of the diorama without messing up the diorama. So this is all going to have to be color matched and repainted and all kinds of stuff, but also the terrain needs to be rough. And so, yeah, I think this is fun. This is a very enjoyable thing. I think that looks great. There's a little bit of mud on him, which there ought to be. That, I think we're calling good. He is in there, and once it dries, he's going to be completely mounted in there. Now, I didn't use a pin or anything behind him. It's just stuck to this stuff, so it is possible to pull him out of there, but I don't believe I'm going to want to. All right, so a little bit of paint. Didn't take too much. I just used the same paints that I used to kind of create it. And I think he fits in great. And this is the balance I was talking about before. I didn't think with the other figure over on the other side, I didn't want him too far back. So now it is time to do some barbed wire. This is my barbed wire. And, you know, the first thing you might notice is the barbs are super long. I mean, they're like the size of your hand in scale. And so this may not be your cup of tea. I like to build my barbed wire like this because I want you to be able to see the barbed wire from, you know, a distance. And so that's kind of, I guess, my justification for it. I like it. And you can trim it down further than I do and make it look a little bit more to scale. But I like those barbs sticking out, and so that's why I've chosen to do it like this. This is my scrap wood jig. It's about 15 inches long, and then it's got two verticals on either side. Those are 4 3/4 inches long, and the cup hooks are what I attach the wire to while I'm making the barbed wire. I use 32 gauge copper wire. It's really thin. It's colored black, so it's a little easier to see. And then I use the handle of my Master Tools 9928 carving stylus to make the actual barbs. I start by stretching one single piece of wire from cup hook to cup hook on my jig. Once that's secured, then I take a second length of wire and I'll secure that on the left-hand side because I'm going to build this moving from left to right. Now I use the handle of the Master Tool sculpting tool, just the handle end of it, and I place that up against the wire and then loop the wire around it and then take the wire and wrap it around that primary wire just one time. Then I'll take the handle, move it to the other side of the wire, and make another loop on the other side. What this does is it makes an S pattern of this second wire along the primary wire. These are going to become our barbs. I'm just speeding it up here so you can see what a good little length of it looks like. So here's a better look at that S pattern that we're creating. And while these are looped around here and secured, they're not static. They'll still move around a little bit. So I take a little bit of medium thickness CA glue and dot each and every one of those little connections to the primary wire. Once I've got that on there, I take a Q-tip and kind of clean off excess and then let that dry, or you can use accelerator on them. Then I come back with some small clippers and I just clip the tops of each of those little loops off on both sides. Now it's starting to look pretty good, but that primary wire is a little bit light. You know, it needs a little bit more. So now I'm taking another length of wire and I'm going to twist this all the way around that primary wire. And I think about trying to get like 2 twists in between each barb. This really adds to the look of the completed barbed wire, because when you see barbed wire, it is two strands twisted with those little barbs in between them. So after making, I don't know, 5 or 10 of these lengths, then I go to my painting jig, and this isn't really a jig, it's just some wax paper that I folded up that really makes it easy and a heck of a lot cleaner than trying to paint these individually. Like, I used to leave them on the jig and then try to paint them there, and it made a huge mess. This little trough I created out of wax paper holds the paint, you place the little wire down in there and then paint over it, does a great job. Now, this wire doesn't hold that great a paint, or it doesn't hold on to paint great, I guess is the better way to say it. And so 2 or 3 coats is necessary to get it to look really nice. Then, once I put it on the model, I'll use different tones of rust, light rust or dark rust, to give a little bit of a varied look to each of these lengths of barbed wire in the model. Here's the barbed wire mounted in the diorama. And what I did was I basically used 3 strands on each post, and then I did this wrap, this circular wrap, a spiral wrap around it, give it a little bit more density. I thought about soldiers doing this, in the middle of the night, because that's when you're going to repair wire and stuff like that primarily. And so I didn't want it perfect. I wanted it a little bit messed up, and I think I achieved that. Well, there we go. I think it's looking pretty good. I've got the wire in there. I've got the figures in there. And now it's really time to start working up here. This is the German position. I've been primarily, though I've done a fair amount of work here, I've been primarily concentrating on no man's land. So now it's time to start up here on this hill. There's a large machine gun emplacement here. There's some rifleman emplacements here, these readouts on the line, and then this trail. So there's a bunch of opportunities for a lot of detail back here. These are basically secured German lines, and the Germans stayed in their lines a lot more. They didn't move their lines as much as the French and British and Allied troops. So I've got a whole bunch of stuff to do back here, and yeah, I think that's going to be our next video. I hope you have a wonderful day. I have had a wonderful time showing this to you. And if you have any questions about how I do any of these processes, techniques, any of my building stuff, yeah, just go ahead and give me a comment down below, and I answer all my comments, and I'd love to help. Hope you have a great day. We'll see ya.